I'd like to introduce now our debaters for the session on the oil sands. To my right is David Collyer, President of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and to my left is Simon Dyer, Director of Oil Sands at the Pembina Institute. Gentlemen, the question today is, are the oil sands developing too quickly? Mr. Collyer, your opening statement, please.
Thanks very much, and appreciate the opportunity to participate in this dialogue. I think it's an important issue, and I welcome the opportunity. Let me just, before I address the question of pace, let me just provide a little bit of context. I think it's important to look at where oil sands fits in a global context. World energy demand is increasing significantly. I think the vast majority of forecasters would agree with that. Most people say 50% increase by about 2030 and a doubling of global energy demand by about 2050. That's driven by population increases, and it's driven by the aspirations of the developing world for a much better standard of living than they have today. And I think those factors are very firmly embedded. So then we look at the demand, at the supply side, and where is the energy supply going to come from to meet that increasing demand? And our view would be that we need all sources of energy, and they all need to be developed responsibly. And hydrocarbons are going to be a significant part of that energy supply mix, we believe, for the foreseeable future. 85% globally today. If you look at the period out to 2030 or so, most people would say something in the order of 75% will come from hydrocarbons. So we're going to be a key part of the supply mix, and it's important that that development take place responsibly. If we go to hydrocarbons, clearly the conventional basins are declining globally. Unconventionals, both gas and oil, are increasingly important. And Canada, I think, is rather uniquely positioned in that context in terms of having a very large unconventional resource base and the opportunity to contribute significantly to energy supply. And that in itself creates an economic opportunity. I believe if you look at the oil and gas industry today, we contribute to about 500,000 jobs in the Canadian economy, direct and indirect. 25% of the value of the TSX or thereabouts. Contributions to various levels of government, something in the order of $25 billion in 2007. So a very significant impact across the economy. The Canadian Energy Research Institute is just doing an update on some work they've done previously around economic contribution of the industry in Canada. They forecast something in the order of a $2.4 trillion contribution to GDP over the period 2010 to 2030, and something in the order of 1.5 million new jobs, direct, indirect, and induced. So it's very hard for me to look at the economy and see another opportunity that is going to have the size of impact that the oil and gas sector does and that oil sands does. And those numbers I talked about for Syria are oil sands specific. So then if we look at what governs the pace of development, to come to the specific question, I think there's three important factors. One is the market, and I think there's lots of evidence to suggest that reliance on market factors in terms of regulating economic activity is the preferred course. We've seen many examples of intervention in that regard in Canada that have not worked particularly well, and I think market forces are the key driver in that respect. Second is regulation. This industry is very heavily regulated, both federally and provincially, and I would put our regulators up against many of the other countries that we're competing with in terms of energy supply. And finally, and I think the third important point, is corporate responsibility. Business principles of the companies operating in the oil sands and the fact that these are long-term projects, long-term investments, and we're going to be there for a long time, I think create a vested interest for companies to act responsibly. So to sum up, address the question, I think there's clearly a significant demand for energy. We have the opportunity to contribute significantly to that energy demand in a responsible way. And I think the market factors, the very stringent regulatory environment we have in Canada, and the responsibility of the companies operating in the sector will lead to the appropriate governance of the pace of activity.
Okay. Thank you, David.